Call on the Honourable Carlos Quaremba.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I'll begin by acknowledging those that entrusted me with a seat in this chamber, the great people of South Australia. This community welcomed me when I chose to make my home in this state. This community has built a unique place in the world. They've put their stamp on the history and the development and culture of this nation, and I'm proud to be one of them. I'm privileged to represent them. For the next 8 years, I commit to serving them and the state we call home. And I promise it's going to be a very interesting 8 years, because I and my One Nation candidates are not here to conduct business as usual. We're here to change all that. We're here to be the true and trusted voice that South Australians have been denied for too long. We take our inspiration and example from the most tenacious, most resilient and most enduring political leader this country has ever seen, Senator Pauline Hanson. This brave woman has stood the test of time, and she has always come out with a directness, honesty and steadfast principles. Senator Hanson wears her heart on her sleeve and her love for Australia and its people. She never leaves you in any doubt about what she thinks and what she believes. Since I first met her more than 4 years ago, Senator Hanson has challenged me and advised me in the same way. She has believed and trusted in me just as I have believed and trusted in her. I will always be grateful that Senator Hanson gave me the opportunity to lead and represent One Nation in South Australia. She trusted me to lead the party from one of its lowest points only a year ago and build a foundation for unprecedented success we have then seen in the state election. For this and so much more, Senator Hanson, I thank you. Mr Deputy Premier, apologies, I called it early. Mr Deputy President, my journey began a very long way from here. I was born in Buenos Aires, in the capital of Argentina, and came here in 1977 when I was not quite 2 years old. My family lived in a migrant hostel before my parents eventually bought their first home in Melbourne for $56,000. My earliest memories of Australia and its culture are very different from what I feel now. Soccer was not a sport that was played in Croydon, in my home suburb in Victoria, but I quickly learnt a lot about Aussie rules. I was definitely a fish out of water on my first day of school. I really noticed the difference as other kids opened their lunchboxes to reveal Vegemite sandwiches and chips, while I had a Tupperware container of a hunk of bread, cheese and salami, as we call it now, antipasta. I will always remember the strange looks I got, but it didn't take me long to convince the other kids to trade lunches. I also discovered the joys of the school tuck shop. That exchange wasn't always one way, of course, as you can see. My first friend was an enterprising young lad by the name of Grant Hartskill. He was the first to experience the culture of my family. Argentinian asado was a Sunday tradition in the Quaremba family, along with beef ribs, chorizo, and the now famous chimichurri. Grant became a convert and never ate a burnt barbecue sausage with tomato sauce ever again. From a young age and all through high school, he and I were always coming with various schemes and ideas of how to make money. One time we came up with a brilliant idea of going down and doing a car wash at the end of our street. We rounded up some mates, hooked up the hoses, and set up our drive-through car wash, complete with kids holding signs directing traffic off Main Bayswater Road. It was a great day, right up until the owners of the house, for which we were borrowing the hose and water, came home early from a holiday. A free car wash and half of our profits were the price we paid for this little business endeavour. If there was a buck to be made, we were in it. We probably even skirted the boundaries of the law on occasion, but we always knew that if we messed up, there was a stern hand waiting for us when we got home. That's just how it was back then, and no one died from it. I had no intention of going to university after I finished high school, and I had no intention of staying at home. My childhood was not one that I would like to remember at most times. I knew that I had to earn my own money, and my first jobs at a ceramics factory only lasted 2 weeks. Unfortunately, the business was not in a good shape. I then started to work at a chemical factory as a chemical operator. I thought I'd hit the jackpot with my first pay, $980 including overtime. That was a lot of money back then, especially when you consider my first rental was only $95 a week. How times have changed. I soon discovered the nightclub scene in Melbourne, hanging out at the Juice nightclub in Ringwood or the Palace Hotel in Camberwell. And that is where I began my career as a DJ. Yes, a DJ. As a young man, I loved this job. Sometimes I would hardly sleep between DJ sets and an overtime shift on a Saturday at the factory. Being a DJ helped me build my vinyl collection, which I still have, and helped me earn enough money to go on these vinyl expeditions overseas. Trawling through underground record stores in places was an experience in itself. I found some absolute gems along the way, including Zoe, Night on a Rainy Day. It was also while I was a DJ that I met someone that encouraged me to get into the building game. I found that late nights working at nightclubs with plenty of cash wasn't the best for my mental health, so I took up a job as a carpenter's apprentice. I must have loved it because making $200 a week as an apprentice didn't measure up to $200 an hour as a DJ, but I stuck it out and I did both, and I'm so glad that I did. It led me to obtain my building licence that I still have today. It also led me to South Australia. I worked as a subby carpenter before moving here about 18 years ago, and I also got a job on the rigs, eventually becoming an assistant driller, drilling for gas and oil in the Cooper Basin. It was hard work, long hours, but I was never more comfortable than when I am in my tradie gear. I eventually became a partner in my own business building homes. The common thread here is that I had no long-term career plans. I had no vision for how my life was going to be. I would often jump into things which grabbed my attention, but I did it with determination to succeed. And that's been the case in politics too. Being a member of the political party, campaigning in elections and representing voters was never on the list of things to do when I was growing up. But I always remember having a sense of justice and fighting against the wrongs that I saw around me. And I love to debate and I love to argue. It's a moral compass that I inherited from my mother, who was a student activist in Argentina during the military junta. As I got older, I started to realise something was profoundly wrong with the choices placed before me at elections. None of them seemed to be what ordinary people wanted or was in their interest. It became clear that something was inherently wrong with the Australian democracy. Voters have been left to choose the least of two worst options. It's disheartening, it's disenchanting, and it's disempowering. As a result, there is a growing distrust in government and political and public institutions. They seem obsessed with noisy, narrow interest, identities and minorities rather than acting in the best interest of the majority. There's also many voters looking for clear alternatives, as seen in the South Australian election in March. It was a good win for us. These voters have made the connection between government policy and the decline of their living standards, their rising costs and fewer freedoms. They no longer recognise Australia as the country they grew up in. As I started learning about politics, I discovered something profoundly wrong with the government decisions made in the past. How can we live in a country the land mass of the US, 1/10 of the population, more resources than we could ever hope for, and yet our standard of living going backwards? We should be the richest people and nation on earth, wanting for nothing and power to be reckoned with across the world. Instead, we're living beyond our means. We're constantly in debt and deficit as the major parties try to buy votes rather than earn them. And we've never been as divided as we are now. The middle ground for peaceful exchange and debate in the contest of ideas has disappeared. Ideology trumps evidence, feelings trumps fact. Governments act directly against the will of the people they are supposed to serve. Immigration policy is a glaring example. Polls after polls, most Australians want immigration to be lowered. The major parties have ignored this sentiment for many years. Labor has brought in more than 2 million people in the last few years, the entire population in South Australia. It just increases demand for housing at a time when supply is extremely low. Government policies put costs and constraints in the ways of improving housing supply. I'm a builder of homes and I can tell you the barriers to improving housing supply are increasing. Government taxes make up 45% of the cost of new homes. The cost of materials like timber have more than tripled after the COVID pandemic. Building companies are collapsing under increasing regulation and costs. The National Construction Code has become a roadblock to sensible construction practices. The cost of a home today is at least 10 times a person's income. When I was a young man starting out, they were only about 4 times a person's income. Perhaps you might wonder why an immigrant is saying this. You shouldn't. A lot of immigrants who come here, my parents included, understand that it is a privilege we have to earn. It's a privilege, not an entitlement. A lot of migrants know that mass migration is a lot of immigrants know that mass migration in the middle of a national housing crisis is one of the stupidest things for which a government has ever been responsible. The only policy which beats this for stupidity, of course, is net zero disaster inflicted on our nation by the Labor, Liberal, Greens and Nationals. We're told we have to play our part in a global effort to reduce greenhouse emissions, except the world's emissions are rising, not falling. Many countries are abandoning renewables fantasy in favour of more reliable coal, gas, oil and nuclear. We're told it's to save the natural environment, except we're destroying forests, habitats and good agricultural land to put up wind turbines and transmission lines. We're told renewables provide free energy, except Australia has the highest average household electricity bills anywhere in the eastern world, outside of Europe. It's the single biggest factor in our national cost of living crisis. We have around a quarter of the planet's uranium reserves, but we've outlawed emissions-free nuclear. None of this makes any sense. We send millions of tonnes of coals overseas where it's burnt to produce cheap and reliable energy, but it's demonised in Australia for many of our power plants, and many of our power plants are being closed. Once again, none of this makes any sense. The hypocrisy and gaslighting and willful ignorance of those who support this stupidity is appalling. They are destroying the environment in order to save it. They are sacrificing the future of this country at the altar of ideology. Case in point, Possum Park. The votes of the people now protesting the removal of the trees by the Labor government probably flowed to Labor from the Greens. They didn't flow from One Nation, I can tell you that. Now the Greens are up in arms. But they're smart. They knew this was going to happen all along. Anything to get someone else elected in the upper house, I guess. They could have refused to preference Labor ahead of the election unless they promised not to cut down those trees. What a pack of hypocrites. There's more than one issue I'd like to touch on that's really important to me, and one of those that led me to this place is local government. Some people advised me against running for a position on the Victor Harbour Council many years ago. They told me I was mad and wasting my time. However, I knew the path that many parliamentarians have taken, including Pauline herself, has been through local council. She encouraged me to give it a go. I ran on a basic platform that in the middle of a cost of living crisis, councils have a moral obligation to keep rates as low as possible. After taking a seat in the chamber, I quickly learnt that my only wins were not going to be in the chamber, but out with the people, because that is where the true power lies in these places. They just don't know it yet, but I'm going to let them know how. I believe local government is broken. I think local government, in some aspects, is rotten to the core. Councils like to say that they're the tier of government that is closest to the people, but my experience is the opposite. They are more secretive than parliamentarians, often taking important decisions behind closed doors under the pathetic commercial in confidence excuse. Elected councillors who dare to speak up on behalf of ratepayers opposing the administration-led decisions are silenced. The Local Government Act is abused and weaponised against people that want to actually do something good for the community who speak out. Genuine opposition is falsely portrayed as disrespecting the chamber, and you must toe the line. Well, that wasn't me. I was never going to toe the line. Councillors that go through this process are punished and are forced to almost resign from council because it's too painful. That wasn't me. I love the pain. And as Corey said, I think I need to build up some scar tissue. I just believe it's an abuse of democracy. Councils reward poor performance, A perfect example of that is the City of Victor Harbor Council itself, the council which I was on. This is a small regional council with fewer than 12,000 ratepayers and just over 100 employees that costs the council and the community $13 million a year, and it already has an $11 million debt. The council CEO, Victoria McCurdy, has been promoted to the CEO of the Local Government Association. Can you imagine my surprise? Instead of being sacked in disgrace. And councils go well beyond their remits. Rates, roads and rubbish is what most ratepayers want. The great example of this overreach was when Mitcham City Council decided, without consulting ratepayers, to give $40,000 to the Yes campaign, which is in the Yes campaign in the Voice to Parliament referendum. It took sides in a constitutional referendum which is entirely and solely the matter under federal jurisdiction. Now, I want to be clear with everybody here. I'm not anti-council. In fact, I really love the idea of local government. I support the concept of local government. We don't want to abolish it at One Nation. We just want to fix it. It shouldn't be too hard. We want to make it accountable, transparent, and democratic against, and we wanted to put it back in its place. My experience on local government is that there's too many bureaucrats, too many independent contractors, and too many snouts in the trough, and I think it's about time we made some bacon. My president, Mr. President, Deputy President, I should say, there were two categories of people that I'd like to thank. First of those are those who motivated me for all the wrong reasons. In addition to the aforementioned Miss McCurdy, I would also want to thank the Mayor of Victor Harbor Council, Maura Jenkins, for their constant effort to keep me quiet and compliant. The two toxic individuals have given me all the fire in the belly that I need, and while they decided to poke the bear while I was in the cage, I'm no longer in the cage. So now round two begins. Then there are those who have supported me, starting with my dear mother. She was an amazing woman, instilling me with a work ethic like no other. She kept the family together while working many jobs and obtaining 4 university degrees, none of which she actually used. I'd also like to thank my stepfather, Oscar, or as I like to call him, Dickie. That's because he's only 4'4". You have been more of a father to me than I could ever have hoped. You made my mother's last 5 years of her cancer battle as comfortable and dignified as possible. Thanks to Annie and Ray Demkew over in Victoria for being great sounding boards and godparents to my daughter Lola. I'd like to thank Councillor Stuart Burns and Councillor David Kemp, who made my time at Victor Harbor Council just that bit more bearable. Gentlemen, round 2 of local government battle has begun. I'd also like to thank Lance Labrandy from South Coast Television for tirelessly recording all those council meetings that I couldn't attend yet wanted to watch. And to Peter Charles and Terry Andrews for their work advocating for the people of Victor Harbor well past their time as councillors. I must also acknowledge my business partner Nick Anastasius, or as I like to call him, Hollywood. Thank you for being the best big brother I've ever had, or never had, I should say. I wouldn't swap anything for all the highs and lows on the building site. You're also the best fishing buddy a guy could ever have. I've outfished you every time and you've never seemed to complain about it. I also would like to acknowledge Richard Henderson and James Ashby, two of the best and most savvy political operators a novice like me could ever hope to have as mentors. You both put a level of trust in me and gave me the backing to take on this project. Well, how do we go, guys? I think pretty good. I am so glad that we have such a great team at One Nation HQ. To Kelvin, Alex, Liddy, Trudy, Liam and the rest of the team, keep up the good work. To all our federal members, Senator Hanson, Senator Roberts, Senator Bell and Senator Whitten, keep flying the flag for us in Canberra. I'll be sending you some South Australian reinforcements soon enough. To the newly elected David Farley in the New South Wales seat of Farrer, we've only spoken briefly, but I can tell you're a great bloke and I'm looking forward to catching up for a beer soon. And to my mate, the Honourable Barnaby Joyce. What can I say? You took me under your wing on your visit to South Australia and gave me some great advice and some great stories, which I'll keep private, of course. To our leader, the Honourable Corey Bernardi, and the One Nation team inside this building, the Honourable Rebecca Hewitt, Member for Hammond, Robert Roy Lance. Member for Narunga, Chantal Thomas. Member for Mackillop, Jason Virgo. And Member for Nadgery, David Payton. We've all achieved something very special, and that will never be taken away from us, and for that I'm eternally grateful. To the One Nation team outside this building, the executive team, the volunteers, the supporters, the members and candidates. This is only the beginning, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It will always be a team effort. I would like to thank my new family, Dennis, Barb, Jared, Bevan, Knowles, and my stepkids, Kiana and Jay. A family that has accepted me with open arms since I started dating their daughter, Kirsty. I love our family dinners filled with laughter and conversation about the things that matter to everyday Australians. I especially love the Knowlesies parties that inevitably end in too much drinking, karaoke, and the usual slice of heaven rendition. And if things really get going, the conga line of the Knowlesy shuffle led by Dennis himself. To my amazing partner, Kirsty, or wife now, that we've got married in Bali. You've accomplished so much in your own right while supporting me on this journey. You've put up with a lot, especially during the campaign. And I will never forget this. And I hope that you will always give me frank advice that only a partner can give. You make me want to be a better man. And finally, to my daughter Lola Argentina Quaremba, who can't be here today because she's working. That's good. I know Dad hasn't been around much as we'd both like. You've always been in my thoughts and in my heart. You have grown up to be an amazing young lady. I remember the time you came home to tell me that you didn't want to go to school anymore. The conversation started like this: Dad, I don't think school is for me. What are my options? I replied, you have two options. Number one, you go and get an apprenticeship and you become a tradie. Number two, you go get an apprenticeship and you become a tradie. And before you tell me that's the same option, I replied with, I know, it's such a good one, I thought I'd mention it twice. I remember the first day on your job site with Dad as a builder's labourer, hanging cement sheet with the lads. You never asked for preferential treatment or anything special, just a clean Portaloo and a pink high-vis top. One of my proudest Dad moments was when I signed your apprenticeship papers. I know your attention to detail will come in handy as you undertake your training to go on to run your own business, or maybe a career in politics. Only joking. You have a bright future ahead of you and a bright life. It's for your future that I do this, and for the future of all children that I do what I do here. And I'm so proud that I've actually made it. Thank you very much.